Here we are, Gary. We're on top of Masada, and here is a replica of it. You want to point out some of the important stuff that's up here on this model for us?
Yeah, probably the most clear evidence. This is the north side here. This is a stair-step palace. The shadow's in the way here. 1, 2, 3, and you can walk down these. There's metal stairs going down here. There's mosaics along these back walls. This is part of the Herod's palace as he developed Masada as actually kind of like a resort.
And as you move up from the palace, what do you have?
Yeah,
in this area here.
So what you've got here, these long-looking structures appear to be storehouses of various kinds, because this is a deserted plateau. How do you get stuff up here to live and survive for weeks and months at a time?
Well, they actually found vessels, jars with perishable, with food in it.
Yes, yeah.
From 2,000 years ago.
Yeah. So,
and what is this structure here? Is that the bathhouse?
Oh, this is the bath. Oh my goodness, this is possibly the most amazing bathhouse ever. It's got a place for a changing room. It has an area where you could be, I guess you could call it, I don't know, it's a fancy name for it, but a tepid area. And then it has a hot area. And how did they keep those things hot, Scott?
They had a lot of slaves up here doing a lot of work.
Yeah, they had a flooring, and underneath the flooring there was a space and there were pillars. And back over here, slaves would keep fires burning, and they'd be ushering steam underneath where the
So like a steam bath.
It's like a steam bath.
And then they would go into a pool, an outside
pool.
pool.
Oh man, there's pools. There's
several of them.
There's several of them.
Let's move down here. Here's one a big pool.
Way in the back. Here's the southern end of Masada. And what you're looking at here is basically our equivalent of a swimming pool.
Outside pool.
Outside pool.
And then all of these other buildings functioned as places for people to live or to accomplish some kind of purpose for Herod.
We just passed this area here as we walked.
That's the Western Palace, is it not?
That's the Western Palace, and that's where Scott has video of some Jewish people doing some, I guess, celebrating.
Now, the area called the Fortress of Masada was only inhabited for about 100 years. And you can see why, because it's so high above. It was first inhabited by the Hasmoneans for a short period of time. And then Herod built his palaces up here. How long did that last?
Yeah, not very long. I mean, Herod was 40 to 4 BC. And after that, he no longer was a part of this. It was eventually taken over, but it's a.
So he put a lot of effort into this, but we don't really know how much time he actually spent up here.
Yeah.
But it had gardens, it had pools. So what you're seeing here is nothing like it was during Herod's time. He had aqueducts that brought water to the base of the mountain and then were hand carried up by slaves.
Yeah.
And he had huge cisterns system along the side of the mountain and up at the top. We're not going to go into them, but
they're massive.
They're massive amounts of water. And this is a place that became a hideout for who?
Yeah, when the Romans finally put down the Jewish revolt that started in 66, and Jerusalem fell in 70, there were a number of Jews who escaped, and they came here to escape and fortify themselves against the Romans. They were here a good, there's some question about it, but I think 3 years.
So this was the last of the remnants of the zealots that rebelled against Rome.
That's
You
right.
had some in Gamala, as it's called.
That's to the north.
To the north. And then you had some at Arbel, who died in the caves that are below the top. We'll see those. But here, there's a story of 960 or so Jewish zealots that supposedly once the Romans broke through the casement that surrounded the Masada fortress, they killed themselves.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. It's by a guy named Josephus, who is a Jewish historian writing for the Romans. The Romans built up a huge siege ramp we're on the east side. Over there on the west side, they broke through. And apparently, according to Josephus, they discovered that these 960, well, there are a few remaining, I think a mom or a couple of moms and their kids, but for the most part they committed suicide rather than become slaves of Rome.
Yeah, the myth is that first the husbands killed the wives and the children, and then 10 men were picked to kill the rest of the men, and then one killed the 9 that were left and then committed suicide. And our resident scholar, Shelley, sort of questioned whether or not that actually happened. What was the central reason it's been questioned by historians?
Yeah, the big issue is how many bodies they found here. And apparently they only found 28 bodies, which is a far cry from the 960, that Josephus brings up. So the question is, were there that many bodies? How many were there? And what happened to them, if there were that many?
So where were the rest of those bodies? And we might speculate on that. Yeah. Did the zealots that came up 100 years later or 70 years later, 70 years later, carry the bones off of those who had died? Or, exactly what happened to them, we don't know. But there does cast a doubt onto the reality of the story of Josephus. He was a Jew writing for a Roman audience. So we'll leave it at that.
But nevertheless, this is an amazing site. This is my 4th time up here, and it never ceases to amaze me how much was built up in approximately the year 0.
Now the IDF uses this as a place to bring all their soldiers, and they gather over here underneath this Jewish flag, I believe.
Which you can hardly see because it's not flowing.
Right.
But that's a giant Israeli flag, and my understanding is that they bring Jewish recruits to the Israeli Defense Forces, and they bring them up here to, I guess...
make a pledge.
Pledge on this spot. It's very symbolic of...
We will defend our land to the last man.
Yeah.
No more giving up land. So this is a place that they hold in high regard. In fact, probably the highest regard beside the Temple Mount. This is a place that's revered because of the story that's found in Josephus.
So a lot of history here. Very little usage. From that time of the revolt, this area was not used for, probably since 130s.
So 100 years. And what that does is it cements the Herodian evidence in pottery and in building materials, so we get a good idea what was taking place in that 1st century as far as archaeological evidence.
That's right, Scott.
Really helpful. Really helpful. Let's go and see if we can see the palace before we take off on the other side a little bit.
Do we have time for that? I think we could bring new military recruits up here and to swear them in as a symbolic.
We're walking around Masada, headed towards the Western Palace, where we're going to record our impressions and just a little bit of information that we have about Masada, which was Herod's palace, and then served as a hideout for the rebels after the 70 AD destruction of the city of Jerusalem and the temple. The people ran here, the zealots, and they came up and they hid because of all the food and the water that had been stored here by Herod. You can see the Dead Sea out there. Oh, shouldn't do that, bounces.
I don't think we're going to be able to record here.
Probably not.
the time.
Guys, ladies, make room to your friends. Go in, please. Group hug.
Friends? There you go.
For three more, room for two more. He's really going to
Lady.
Taking the tram down.
I was walking whether it was open or closed. It didn't matter.
Here's the snake path.
Devin, touch me.
You're doing okay, Stacy?
תודה רבה לכולכם בגן הלאומי בצפון. המקווים שלנו נשמח אתכם שוב בקרוב.
We thank you and hope you enjoyed your visit to Masada National Park. We look forward to seeing you again soon.
That's the visual. Look down below you. It's very clear. Every 100 meters, they have a guard tower.
When you say siege wall, what describe that?
You still in this country,
Just as a additional
It was already in other areas.
This is outside the tram. Just got off looking up. You can see the entrance, people walking down. The facilities to take care of your needs.